Most of what we believe about the brain didn't come from a science lab. It came from productivity culture, pop psychology, and honestly, just things that sound like they should be true. And a lot of these common beliefs can quietly shape how we judge ourselves, our motivation, and even our own happiness.
I believed a lot of these myths myself, and looking back, some of them definitely made my life harder than it needed to be. Today, we're going to walk through 10 of them. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around because the last one is the most important, and it might just completely change how you think about your own brain. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll tackle the myths that stop us from even getting started. Then, the ones that mess with our ideas about happiness. After that, we'll look at myths about how we actually work. And then finally, we'll get to the single most damaging myth of them all. Okay, let's start with the myths that keep us stuck, the ones that stop us from taking that first crucial step. This one's a classic, right? We're told to wait for motivation to show up before we do anything, but the reality is our brain often works the exact opposite way. Action is what creates motivation. It's the spark. Waiting to feel ready is probably one of the fastest ways to stay stuck, and yet so many of us blame ourselves for a brain process we just had backwards. And this next idea builds right on top of that. We look at really disciplined people and we think, wow, they must just be wired differently. But discipline isn't some magical trait you're born with or without. It's really just a system you build in your environment. Structure beats willpower pretty much every time. And this is so important because when we believe discipline is something you have or you don't, we turn what's just a design problem into a painful problem with our self-worth. Okay, what about consistency? The story goes, you need passion to stick with something, but let's be real, passion is unstable. It comes and it goes. Your brain, on the other hand, absolutely loves predictability. Real, lasting consistency isn't built on excitement. It's built on rhythm and systems. So many of us are just waiting for that passionate feeling to come back instead of just building a rhythm that works even on the days we don't feel like it. All right, next up, let's dig into the myths we tell ourselves about feeling good, about happiness, and all those chemicals that are buzzing around inside our heads. We hear about dopamine constantly. It's the happiness molecule, right? Well, that's a huge misunderstanding. Dopamine isn't about happiness. It's about anticipation. It's the chemical of wanting. So when we're constantly chasing those dopamine hits, scrolling, chasing novelty, getting rewards, our brain doesn't actually get happier. It just gets more restless. So many people think they're broken because that feeling of joy never lasts, when in reality, they were just told the wrong chemical story to begin with. Now this one, your brain is designed to make you happy. Sounds so comforting. It's also completely false. Your brain's number one job, the one it evolved to do over millions of years, is to keep you alive, not fulfilled. Its priorities are safety, survival, and spotting patterns. Happiness is an amazing byproduct, but it was never the main goal. So when we expect our brains to just constantly pump out joy, we wind up feeling like something is fundamentally wrong with us. We're taught that all stress is bad. And yeah, as you can see here, chronic, relentless stress is absolutely harmful. But not all stress is created equal. Short-term, meaningful stress, the kind you feel when you're tackling a challenge you actually care about, that can sharpen your attention and help you learn. It just goes to show that when you try to get rid of all the stress in your life, you might also be getting rid of challenge and growth. And what about rest? We think it just means doing nothing, right? Zoning out. But the brain doesn't really recover through pure inactivity. It actually recovers through a change in activity. Have you ever tried to rest by scrolling on your phone for an hour, only to feel even more tired afterward? That's not you being lazy, that's just biology. Real rest often comes from engaging your brain in a different way. Okay, let's shift gears to our third section, the myths that shape how we think about work, about performance, and about our ability to change. Oh, we love to believe that multitasking makes us more efficient. But here's the truth. The brain doesn't actually multitask. It just switches from one thing to another really, really fast. And every single one of those switches costs a little bit of mental energy. What feels like you being super productive is often just your brain getting exhausted in disguise. So many people think they have a focus problem, when really, their brain is just overloaded. We hear about neuroplasticity all the time, this amazing ability of the brain to rewire itself. And it is real. But this pop psychology idea that you can form a new habit or totally change your brain in 21 days, well, it just sets us up with unrealistic expectations. Real, lasting change is slow. It takes months, sometimes even years. A lot of people quit, not because changing is impossible, but because they were sold a fantasy about speed instead of the reality of the process.
All right, we've covered a lot, but now we've arrived at the final myth. And this is the one that I truly believe causes the most quiet damage in our lives.
Before I just tell you what it is, I want you to sit with this question for a moment. Just think about it. What if all those times you felt like you were failing? What if your brain wasn't actually broken?
This is it. The most damaging myth of all. It's the belief that if you feel unmotivated or tired or foggy, that it means something is wrong with you, that your brain is failing. But here's the crucial reframe. Those feelings are not a signal of failure. They are a signal of misalignment. It often just means that your environment or your expectations or the pace you're trying to keep are out of sync with how your brain is actually built to work. It's not a personal flaw, it's a biological signal. And what's amazing is that when people finally stop blaming themselves, clarity has a funny way of quietly returning. You know, the reason these myths are so powerful isn't because they're stupid. They hurt us because they sound reasonable. They sound like things that should be true, which makes them that much harder to let go of.
So if even one of these myths felt familiar to you, if you've ever judged yourself based on one of them, it doesn't mean you were foolish. It just means you're a human trying to figure out this incredibly complex and amazing thing inside your head.
So I'm really curious, which one of these myths surprised you the most? Let me know by dropping the number down in the comments. I read every single one of them. And hey, if you want more calm, science-based clarity about how your brain really works, you know what to do. Thanks for being here.
Hi, I'm Nanmure, and this is Neuroscience of Everything. To get your weekly dose of neuroscience backed tips and hacks, subscribe now.